that coach that you had back in high school or college or whatever, or that relationship you were in, or that terrible triathlon coach you had, like, they're not thinking about you, but you're still carrying that negative load of I can't, I can't, I can't. And if you obsess about so much of an outcome or what you can't do, then you're never going to figure out what you can.
Welcome back.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It feels like seriously, it feels like it's been like 3 weeks since we've done a podcast. We were a little bit late-ish, I guess, last week on Tuesday, and then we banged out another one Wednesday to get it out early Thursday. And hey, here we are again, latest ever, thanks to me. Blame it on me. It is May 12th, 2020. Welcome aboard, Crushing Iron Podcast episode. I believe this is episode 372.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, 372 feels like the year 2023. But yeah, we are here. We are back. Whew, dude, man, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be on the podcast with you. First off, before I get rolling, how have you been?
Oh, you can't turn this on me.
I'm not going to turn. Well, I mean,
Duh.
I'd
Are
love
you
to,
sure
but
you want me to answer that
I'm
question?
not actually. I regretted saying that as soon as it came out of my mouth. I was like, you know what, man, just kind of just go, because you never know what's going to come out of your mouth. But first off, before we get rolling, and hopefully, give you some awesome information to apply to your life. This is obviously the Crushing Iron Podcast. We cover it all. We cover all things life. We cover a lot of triathlon as well. We do race recaps. We do race previews. We occasionally have on race directors and other guests, but for the most part, Mike and I, as both coaches and athletes that have been in the sport for quite a long time, we've been best friends for 7 years, and that's kind of how we got to know each other. I was his coach doing his first Ironman, which is basically couch to Ironman Wisconsin, 7 years ago. We talk about it all. We talk about what we're going through personally as coaches and athletes, what our athletes are going through. A lot of times we'll kind of hop into we have a really awesome Facebook group called Crushing Iron Group. It's on Facebook. You can hop in there if you want to. Sometimes we'll dive in there and kind of get the pulse of our community and answer direct questions from that. And we cover some technical aspects, some really specific training episodes where we dive really far into the data, that for all the kind of data geeks and nerds like to get happy about that. But for the most part, we just try to have an open, honest discussion. No sponsors, no ads, no agenda, just kind of what we're going through and how we're feeling, and if any of those topics, anything that we're going through personally, and how we can hopefully have that in a conversation that is easy to listen to, and you can apply that to your own training and to your own life in a positive way, then we will have considered this podcast a massive success.
Yes, it's a snapshot into what's going on in our lives basically right now. And we are triathletes and we are coaches and we are going through the same things that everyone else is going through. And we're just kind of talking about it as we always have and always will, probably.
Definitely always will.
Yeah, wow. It's a long time, man.
I know it is, but
forever.
hey. Yeah,
You never know.
Who knows, man?
50 years from now, we'll be doing
Yeah.
this podcast.
Older.
I'll be virtual then.
I've got a plethora of topics to go into.
I figured you would. You had a long drive. You can't not come up with
Long drive. It does. It kind of piggybacks. Well, I'll give this an option. I'll give you the option to basically pick. We're doing a Zoom call for athletes this week, tomorrow. And I'm going to go over a specific block training. And what I mean by that is, like, we've discussed this in some of our running specific how to nutsuck at running podcasts, and then a very deep dive in our how to not suck at cycling podcasts. If you haven't listened to those and you're a first time listener, go back and listen to those. But block training, a lot of people will consider that, base block or base phase, build phase or build blocks, however you want to phrase it. But one of the best things for athletes to do in their development stage is to pick out a specific piece of a discipline, not just run specific and not just bike specific, but a more detailed process oriented approach to a block training in cycling would be, I'm going to work on muscular endurance this phase, or I'm going to work on sustained power this phase, or critical or anaerobic, or I'm going to work on big gear work, or I'm going to work on higher cadence. Like, these are all things you should be going through systematically in your training anyway, kind of fine-tuning weaknesses, maximizing strengths. But also, it's a really great way to stay focused and dialed into what many of us find ourselves in right now, which is we find ourselves kind of dug into what may very well be a very, very long process. The process of training for a very extended period of time before we actually get to, put our racing kit on and get out and let it rip and kind of see what we've built. It's a great way to kind of shorten that into, different chapters of your training book, if you will, to kind of keep you dialed in and focused before you move on to the next one. So that was a topic we're going to go on our Zoom call in detail with our athletes, and I know we'll post that into the online hub. But the other one that I was thinking of, and I think another athlete posted this in our close Facebook group last week, was about eliminating stress and pressure from your life. And obviously, I think we're all going through some kind of change in our life right now that's either adding stress or adding pressure. And triathlon can be a reprieve from that. It can be a sanctuary. It can be a place where you go to kind of live your life and not be touched and not be talked to and have your alone time and think things through. But what can also happen, and I think we've all at some point, I know I have, fallen victim to the obsessive nature that is the volume or the very rigidness of triathlon training. We talked about this, I think, last week in terms of trying to be flexible, but we can talk about that. So either stress and pressure and how we can minimize it to hopefully maximize our performance and just basically how we feel as I think humans and athletes, or we can talk about more of a specific podcast and go into like block training for racing. And we can obviously cover the other one on Thursday, which is tomorrow.
Yeah, why don't we do that, man? Let's because
Yeah, about that.
yeah, about
Yeah, I
that
wanted you just to
block
come in
training.
on
Yeah,
that,
that's
or
sounds like a great
yeah,
thing for Thursday.
yeah.
I
Actually,
just, for me, yeah, like I think I feel like you've been probably under some stress, and we talked about it a little bit about our favorite quote of how matters how people walk through the fire. Is that the quote? What matters most is how people
Charles,
walk through the
yeah,
fire.
our buddy Charles. Yeah, what matters most is how you walk through the
Stupakowski.
fire. Yes.
So I thought that we could go into that because there's a lot of things obviously going on with that. I also wanted to ask if you wanted to start with because the pools are opening up now a little bit more in the lakes, and I didn't know if you wanted to maybe like a 5 minute quick hitter on how to get back into the pool. I mean, I'm sure you've been
So,
telling a lot of people that.
so
You probably got some
25
top of mind.
minutes.
25 minutes?
Let's see, 25. You know me and swimming. Like you tell me to talk for 5, and it's like, oh well, next podcast we're actually going to talk about stress and how you can manage pressure. And we'll bump the block podcast to next Monday. No, it is. It's a good topic. I kind of alluded to it in our team email yesterday, in that a lot of athletes are already back. Like they are. I'm programming swimming, which is like I feel like much more. Talk about like removing some stress. Like I think a lot of coaches probably have enjoyed not programming swimming. I love it. I love programming swimming. I kind of use the analogy in another email that for a coach, it's like, or if you want to use an analogy like being a chef, it's like taking salt away. Like you use salt, you've used it in every meal and every dish in some way or some fashion for 10 or 15 years, and all of a sudden, like, hey, you can't use this anymore. And I think swimming is so unique, and I've had a lot of athletes comment on it that, there are so many benefits to swimming, not just from the nature of getting better as a swimmer, and that the fact that that discipline itself is important in reference to triathlon, but also like the specific nature that it's non-load bearing, and that you can really get, if you want to, a very specific workout done that's advantageous to developing specific swim strength, like pulling, while also being in somewhat of a cold water, immersive, well, not a lot of wise, but at some pools, and then flushing the legs out by not using them a ton. And you can really kind of kill two birds with one stone with swimming in a lot of ways. And how most athletes feel like just super rejuvenated from the constant beating that is like the legs and the legs and the legs. And while, cycling isn't load bearing per se, it is super demanding on, and that, I think that's also one of the things people forget about cycling, is that the fact that it's not load bearing really allows you to just absolutely smash your legs. Like you can't go out. You don't see athletes going, well, you do some, but you don't see athletes going out and like, right now everyone's doing like Zwift races and rides and smashing themselves and going out and really riding as hard as they can. Well, you don't see them doing that running because you'll get injured and it just beats up your body so much. But the accumulative fatigue still occurs. And swimming is that one where, at least the way that we structure swimming, in our philosophy behind it, is it's very much an upper body sport in my opinion, especially triathlon and open water swimming, and the fact that you're going to use the legs the rest of your race, the rest of your race, the fact that that your legs are such large muscles anyway that demand an enormous amount of blood and oxygen, so we make it upper body. So it's just a really good way to just complement. It's the perfect complement actually to running and cycling. And so adding that back in, I think, is a it's going to aid in recovery, but it's also going to obviously allow you opportunities to kind of see where you need to work on. You may find that your feel for the water comes back quick. You may find that your stroke mechanics are still there, but your muscular endurance is not. You may find that you get winded very quickly and it all falls apart. But those are the things that you need to, and I think one of the things I need to say is that you want to get in the water if you can at least like twice a week to start. If you're going to go once a week, like just swim hard. Don't just piddle around. Like I would go twice a week for a few weeks and then bump it to 3. You don't want to just go from straight from 0 to probably for most athletes like the 3 or 4 and play catch up because your arms are going to get so tired you're probably going to fall away with form anyway. Give them a chance to recover, add it in, do a lot of things that incorporate, getting a good feel for the water, short intervals, 25s, 50s, and just be smart about it. But I would definitely choose to like remove one of your active recovery bikes or even a runs if that's what you're programming in your schedule. And if you have an opportunity to swim, add it in. Shove the pool buoy in between your legs. Do your legs a favor, give them a break, which they haven't likely had one in like 2 or 3 months, and
Right.
just work your upper body. And that's the best place I could say. It's very general, and obviously it's got to be very specific to the athlete. But if you're creating your own program, that's what I would do. I think it's an easy way to kind of get your feet wet when the pools get
Mm,
back open, and yeah, a lot of people are having to like reserve lane time and all kinds of things, but definitely get back in the water and don't, which I think is going to be what some athletes kind of fall into is they're basically going to be like, well, the pools haven't been open, I'm probably not racing this year, so I can probably take some more time off and get back in. We're training for a sport that involves 3 disciplines. You haven't been able to use the pool. It doesn't mean you are no longer a triathlete. You are no longer a person trying to get better as a triathlete. And the longer you don't work on it, the worse it's going to get. There are specific things you can do, but get back in the pool, take advantage of it. Be smart about it, and I think you'll find yourself back feeling, at least from a stroke standpoint, because you might not feel totally anaerobically there, but as long as you've been running and riding fairly hard, like your hearts and your lungs are still going to be able to hit a pretty high threshold. It's the muscular endurance for most athletes that I think is going to be the part they're going to need to get back, but it'll come back quick. Your muscle memory is great, and as long as you're holding form and you're doing it repeatedly and you're focusing on things you need to, it'll come back quick. Don't fret.
mm, don't fret.
Don't
Well, my
fret.
only fret would be I just that whole thing about going back to swimming, and sometimes that first 2 or 3 times I swim, I am just absolutely baked after I swim. So I guess the question becomes, it's like that thing we talk about in the nobody really thinks about how much the swim affects their bike and the ability to hold arrow and how much you get tired in your arms and things like that. I just think that, it's like anything else. It's like you haven't been swimming in 2 or 3 months. Just don't go balls to the walls out to try and catch up because that could trickle into everything else you've been doing and really kind of throw a wrench in a whole week or two.
Yeah, you don't need to try and play catch up for the last 2 months on your first week back in the pool. Because what you're probably going to find too is like you're going to find athletes that are trying to ramp up their volume so quickly because they want to make up for quote unquote lost time and lost fitness, is that they're going to be doing they're going to do their first thousand yards or the first even 500 yards and they'll have pretty good form. They'll be working the muscles they're supposed to work, and then they're not going to have the same muscular endurance that they had before, but they're going to do another 1,000, another 2,000, and maybe even more than that with their arms totally fried, meaning they can't hold good form, meaning all they're doing is is ingraining and concreting very poor mechanics, which is going to be the first thing your body remembers when it starts to swim again next time. It's not going to revert back to always the perfect stroke. It's going to say, well, let's see, what have I been doing the most of recently? And for a lot of athletes, if you ramp up too quickly, it's going to be a very poor stroke and very poor mechanics, and you're going to work muscles that you shouldn't be working, and then you'll overdevelop muscles that don't need to overdevelop. You'll probably get too much tension, which a lot of people do up in their shoulders or in their lats when it should be more of like your deltoids and your lats. Like those are the things you need to focus on. So like do 25s, do 50s. If you need to make the rest longer, make the rest longer. It's about doing it correctly, especially with swimming, when technique matters so much in terms of making you really, really efficient. That matters. And so get the best return on your investment of that precious time you're going to have back in the pool.
Mm. What if I feel like my form is really screwed up right now. Would it be a good idea to get a swim analysis from you?
Only if I'm like the worst salesman ever.
I know,
Only I know,
me
sorry.
too.
I'm just honest, man. Like only if you're going to be able to swim for, and I've had athletes like email me in the last 2 months, like, hey, is right now a good time to get swim analysis right now? I'm like, no, because you can't get in and fix things. Like when you can get back in the pool regularly, and I'm talking like 2 to 3 times a week, like everyone thinks that like for some reason swimming twice a week or once a week or 3 times a week is like the gold standard. No, there's 7 days in a week. Like, so even if you're swimming 3 days a week, which a lot of people would think is a lot, and that's usually what we do, 3 or 4, you're also not swimming the majority of the time. And a lot of people will tell you if you want to get better at something, you need to do it more than you are not doing it. And so if you're able to get back in the water, if you're able to go to the pool and get in at least 3 sessions a week, and I mean, 2 is the absolute minimum, then yeah, it's a good time to do it, especially if your form is like, totally gone to crap. And I personally love getting a hold of athletes who have like some experience. They haven't gone to some really terrible clinic. They haven't gone out and like really ingrained in a very slow and non-powerful stroke. I love getting people like that because all you need to do now is just show them a correct, easy, very easily digestible form and critique that they need to do to become faster at swimming. Now, on the other hand, if you don't, then you have to, erase and figure out how to remove bad muscle memory and create good muscle memory to have better mechanics. That's obviously a much bigger challenge. So, if you're a newbie, awesome, great time to do it. Start off on a good note, head in the right direction. Don't go in the wrong direction and think, but this is still okay. I'm still going somewhere. And then it just means we got to backtrack even more. It's like people that say, oh, I got to get in shape before I join the gym. No, that's not how it works either. You go to the gym to create a pattern and create a habit that you now associate with getting in shape, and you create that and you continue to go. Not this setting of, or this bar of, I've got to get in shape to look okay before I even go to the gym. Like that's horse crap. Like just go, get in
You're not
shape.
buying that, huh?
No, I'm not. I think it's horrible. Like people do that though. Like people legit think that. Like November, December, people. I mean, I worked in the gymnast for a long time. Like that's how they think. Like, I can't start right now. I got to get in shape. Or I'll even have athletes email me and say, I'm really interested in getting, coaching or becoming part of your team, but I just don't think that I'm in good enough shape. I'm like,
Oh.
well, I need to be at a certain level. And like, first off, I work with athletes of like the broadest spectrum you can possibly imagine. I work with people. I work with athletes. Those are people. That's the kind of people I work with. Like everyone is an athlete, in my opinion. Everyone has different strengths. Everyone has different mindset. Everyone has different goals. Everyone has different time associated with it, and everyone has a different approach to what they want to get out of triathlon. I think it's a very important thing for people to understand. Is that I was having this conversation with a buddy this weekend that we were hanging out with, and I was like, he was like, so like, do you only coach like elite level pros? And I was like, no, I
Yes.
coach
Oh, you don't?
everybody. Yeah, I mean, I coach you. I was like, I coach
Elite
everybody.
level dreamers.
Elite level dreamers, baby. I was like, listen, buddy, I coach a guy who thought rollerblading was good cross training for cycling. Like that's the kind of people that I'm working with. But so I was like, it was Bernard. You know Bernard. You met him at our wedding, but you guys talked about baseball the whole time.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, dude,
Surprising you talk about blading.
I was I was like, no, I work with everyone. He was in from, people that are in their early 20s to people in their late 60s or early 70s, and then both age ranges, all the age ranges, both sexes, pretty evenly split, probably like 50-50. I was like, in every ability level, like we have athletes that do 70.3 that end up in the four teens, like 415 range, tons that end up in the 430 range, and then we have another ton of them that end up in like the 6.5 7 hour range, 7 hour. They're trying to finish like the reason that I love coaching is that everyone is different. Everyone has a different approach. Some athletes want to train for triathlon because they want to have fun. They love the structure, they love the camaraderie, they love the community, and they love what it does for their life. Some athletes could care less about that. All they want to really do is just be focused, perform really well, and see what they can achieve. And both of those, in my opinion, are incredibly admirable. And as long as they are fulfilling a good part of what you need in your life, then have at it. But no, I love working with every single person of the population. I don't work with just a specific kind of athlete. That's also a lie. I work with athletes who like to work hard and they like to have fun, and that's it. That's all I really ask. And everything else is things you work on. But I don't know how we got going there, but that was the swim analysis anyway. But people will say that like, oh, I need to be in shape before I do that. No, the the longer you take to do it on your own, the more you're setting yourself back. And I don't mean that in like a bad way. And people talk about that too with like I want to maximize that time. When should I start using you as a coach, or when should I start doing this, or when should I start going out and doing these specific rides or doing this? And I'm like, well, everything in life that's really good that lasts takes time. So the sooner you can start, because the coach athlete partnership, if you will, is just like any other relationship. It's built on trust, it's built on communication. It takes time to develop, and the best relationships yield the best results. And so that takes time. So the sooner you can start that, the better. But and that goes with training. If you're waiting to train for your first triathlon, and who cares what you get? Who cares if it's a plan out of Triathlete magazine or it's a plan you downloaded online? Like, get started, because the sooner you start to kind of immerse yourself in triathlon and the training, and oh well, I'm not racing till 2021, probably I'll just wait, like, then you're going to be on a different curve had you started now. Like, figure things out, because like this entire process, and one of the reasons that I absolutely love coaching and I love triathlon as sport is that it's something that you never perfect. You just don't. If you think you have it all figured out, if you think you know every answer to everything, and you think you know exactly the way to do everything that you do, then you're wrong. Because everybody is different, and not just everybody is different. Their personalities change over time, their needs change over time, their health changes over time, the life they have, the demands that are in it changes over time, their perspective and objectives in racing changes over time, and what their body responds to changes over time. Like, nothing is ever done. And we say this all the time as athletes. It's like, well, yeah, man, like, I really did good today. And it was like, I know a PR by 20 minutes, but really would like to go sub 5. And you're like, well, I'm glad we got to enjoy that PR for, I don't know, what was that, 17 seconds? Whew, that's a record. Now, moving on to the next thing, because athletes internally are never satisfied. They are, most of them are never satisfied with what they have. It's always about, what else can I do? What can I do next? Or what am I losing? Or what have I not done? Like, it's about checking things off, the bucket list, or checking things off your fitness list, or, I want to go, run a sub 2.5 hour half marathon. Do that. All right, now definitely need to go sub 2. And then it's like, all right, now what? It's like no one ever stops. And the athletes that do stop, usually it's listen, anyone who says they can't do something, they never get that information from the chin down, ever. They get it from the chin up. Anyone who says they can't do this, they will never do that, the reason you're not isn't because of your athletic ability. It's because of what your mind has told you, or your other people have said you can't do. So you've just naturally, either at an instant or over time, you have just become what you believe that you can't. And that is, again, one of the the most gratifying things that I get to feel with coaching is not like and the performance PRs are great for those athletes. I get just as jazzed about those as I do these, but it's like when someone says, "I never thought I could do this." Like that's not a time that they're speaking out to you that's representative of something that has a blue ribbon or a medal or a PR attached or something they can post on Facebook. Like that's for athletics. But when they say those words, I never thought I could do this, it's more representative of a mindset that they've just now torn down, that opens up a door that they've never had lights behind, that there was never a tunnel, there were never streets. They open up this door and they think, hmm, what the hell is this behind this door? Now I want it all. And to be able to be a small part in changing those athletes' mindsets of not just what they can do as an athlete, but what they can do as a person, what they're worth, what they deserve, what they should do with their life, or how they can affect their lives in positive ways. Like those are the changes that give coaches the chills. Not the podiums. Like I love those and they're great, but when you see athletes, at least the ones that we work with, they see them on the podiums and like, they like that and they're happy that they got there or they qualified for this, but it's like afterwards they're like when you can feel the gratitude and the humility that they have, and that that you went on this journey and you can look back and like this super like fast forwarded movie style version of like how the year went. You don't fast forward through the training, you don't fast forward through like the runs and the rides. I'm like, oh dude, I know, man, remember the March 22nd, dude, remember that swim workout you did, crushed it, that's why we're here today. You don't remember any of that. You get this like slow-mo red carpet flashback reel for coaches that is like, you remember when you had that rough patch at work, or you remember you had that rough patch in a relationship, or you remember how your kids were being difficult, or you remember this awesome time, like, man, now look at us, like we're here. And so for athletes to be able to transform that mindset, and to be honest, not all of them do, because a lot of them, or a lot do, but the ones that don't, it's because they just haven't gotten there yet. Not because they can't get there, not because they can't change that perception about who they are, what they're capable of, but they've been, as long, and it's like the same things that goes with fitness and with weight, like, people think, oh, well, I should be losing more weight. Well, it took you a long time to put on this much weight. You're not going to get it off in 2 weeks. That's the same with our belief system and what we see, and how's our reality about who we can become and who we can be and what we can achieve, and what distances we can have and how fast we can be and how strong we are and that we're not injury prone. Like it takes you a while to believe that, and wear that costume or wear that mask that you just become comfortable sitting behind. So the longer you sit behind that, the longer you become that, the harder it is to chisel away. But then something just happens. And it's funny because I was using like, some descriptions of like it happening on race day. Most of the time it happens in training. They look down at their watch and they comment on Training Peaks and they're like, I never in my wildest dreams thought I would look down and see this number. Or when I started out 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 3 weeks ago, I never thought I would see this number. And it's not the number that they're talking about. Like that's like they don't walk in their house and they're not think, oh babe, you'll never guess. Like I ran a 10:20. Like you're never gonna like they're saying that because they're saying 10:20 because it's what they see, but that's not what they mean. Like the 10:20 is just a number that you use as like a representation for other people to try to somewhat understand what you're really trying to say, which is I'm so much better than I thought I was. I can achieve so much more than I really believed I could. Now it's like eyes wide open. What is it that I haven't done already? Or what is it else? What other area of my life or what other area of triathlon? Maybe it's you have a breakthrough in swimming and you're like, oh, what I wonder what breakthroughs I've got next in running and cycling, or vice versa. It just opens up this huge door of endless possibilities that, to be honest, you don't need a race for. You just need to keep pushing. You need to keep pressing. You need to keep working hard. And that's why being consistent and keep working hard, and athletes that don't have to have races, that's why they still keep going, because they've had those feelings with fitness, that it just happens. And again, I have no idea how I got here talking about swimming for 5 minutes, but yet here we are 30 minutes in.
That's what I do. I throw you a bone and
That's
see where
what
it
you do.
goes,
You're
man.
like the you're like the freaking puppeteer, man. You're like, I'm gonna drop a little swim drop on him and then watch him roll. And then look, here we are
Hmm.
talking about
Yeah.
something I had never intended on talking about.
Well, it kind of led in to the idea of because this is really like you, you. I had written down at the beginning the catch-22 of stress. I'm not exactly sure if you said that, but something like that. Um, and for me, this time period is the stress. The biggest stress for me is this idea of patience. Like patience is difficult enough, but I feel like if you like set something up, hey, I know we're going on vacation in 3 months, just be patient, we'll get there. But there's no 3 months, right? It's just
Hmm.
sort of an endless, just be patient, young man. Someday we'll go on a vacation. It's like this weird, like mind trick that you're going to have to play on yourself as in, could be today or it could be next week or it could never
Hmm.
happen. So like, how do you settle into that place and be comfortable with and what's going on right now? And what you said about like, you don't fast forward through your whole improvement cycle. You just go at it each day, and that's exactly what's happening right now because you start to because yeah, I'm a big mind person. I think it's a matter of seeing things and believing them a lot of times, rather than like I almost believe that there's this weird governor on a lot of us that, and I talk about it with my athletes a lot, is that like heart rate, they're trying to get their heart rate down while they're running, and my thing to them is always like, all right, I want you to start thinking about how you're running and relaxing and how to be more comfortable going faster, things like that. So I think this is a really good time to play around with stuff like that. I've been doing it myself where I've been riding, and I've been a terrible zone 2 rider for most of my life,
A terrible substitute rider.
as you probably know. And I wrote
Yeah.
this article in the Hub the other day, is that I'm still suck at recovery, and because I don't recover like half the time on the bike, and I know. So the last few times I've gone out to the lab, which is a very controlled environment, you get super windy one way and it's behind you the other usually, and it's flat. It's like, so I've been going out there with this idea of really just like whenever I feel like stepping on it a little bit, I pull back and just letting things happen. And what's happened has been so interesting to me. It's this like if I go out and ride 10, it's like a mile and 1.2 miles or something like that, and I ride
Hmm.
10 laps. And I've been checking it like on my chrono watch. I'm going to post an article about this because I find it fascinating. I go as slow as I can the first lap, within reason. I don't just super, I'm riding, but I'm not giving it anything. And then I just keep that mentality the whole time. And every time I've done this, my time for each lap has gone down every time, and I feel like I'm not even adjusting my efforts. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like it comes to me naturally, and I wanted to point that out because I it's one of these things where like, okay, so now by the end of that I'm going at a pretty solid clip, not like fast for me or anything, but something that feels all dayable, but it just took me a little while to get there. So that was a long way of me getting to. I think we're capable of more than we think we are sometimes, and sometimes you just have to see it. Do you
Well,
ever think about things like that?
no, I mean, I see it. Like
Okay.
I see it every day. I see it with my own training. I see it with our athletes that we work with. It's like when you set out to run and just run who you are that day, then you respect the days that you don't have it, so you don't trash yourselves. But what you also do is you allow for opportunities to show what you're actually capable of. Because if you don't stare at your watch and think, "Oh, I can't run below 8:30s because today is supposed to be easy," and I'm not 8:30. It's like, who said you weren't 8:30s? Like,
Mhm.
and so they immediately like slow down. Like, that's too fast for me. I can't do. That's why like, and we started talking about this on some of our very, very early podcasts, was that, like when you, like, that's one of the reasons we said, like we have athletes to race without a watch, to go blind. It's yes. Is it to give them to get a good feel of like what effort feels like and what they can really do and what they can really achieve and not, stare at their watch. Yes, but it's also about like showing themselves who they really are without the constraints of what your watch is saying that you can or can't do. And your watch isn't saying that. It's a mirror to your mind and what your belief system is. That's all a watch is. It just ricochets off what you believe, whether it either affirms it or is basically saying no, you're wrong, or no, slow down, or no, speed up. You're not this, or you are this. And so if you think about it that way, like it's going to give you three different scenarios, and so it's got like a 1 in 3 shot. The other ones two might be right too, but you're going to basically affirm what you believe. It's like, oh well, that's way too fast for me today. No, just be who you are. And that's when most athletes, when they're running smooth and they're in that like flow state of running where it seems like effortless, like they're not staring at their watch. I've never seen a person in like a flow state running smooth and calm staring at their Garmin every 5 steps. They're just running. They are being who they are, and it's being expressed through a sport that is running. They're not obsessing over what data is telling them, because it's not the data that they're looking for. It's the affirmation of their feelings or their belief or who they say they have to be before they even put their watch on that morning, or who they believe their legs were going to be able to do that day. Like I had an athlete comment that over the weekend about her run. It was like, oh, the first 2 miles, I thought this was going to be the worst run ever. And then they opened up, and I had one of the best runs I've ever had in my entire life. And I was like, see, that's not like, but that's the freedom of continuing to go with feel, is that you don't assume that, like, so you look down at your watch, like those first 2 miles, like, oh my God, they're like 940s. Like, this is how it's going to be all day.
Yeah, and
And
your
then
heart rate's off the
the heart
charts.
rates are, I mean, like, oh, well, mile 3 is going to happen. I better slow down because I can't do it today. Even though your body's like, and I do believe this. This isn't like scientific. I've never read a paper on that, but I truly believe that when your body wants to like go fast and feel good, and your mind is restraining it, I think that tension actually adds up to like being more stress. Like
That's what I've seen. That's why I think the heart rate goes up.
you're raining, you're stressing, you're like a whole, and don't get me wrong, there is plenty of time to run, the appropriate effort. That's why I don't get I try to get my athletes to not wrap their mind around a specific pace, because you're different every single day. Like all of your runs should be different paces, because you're going to be a different person every day. The terrain's going to be different, the weather's going to be different, the stress is going to be different, the fatigue and load's going to be different. Just be the best version of what you have to offer that day, not the person that you thought you were when you woke up that morning. And then on a grander scale, when you look at the things you can achieve, or the races that you pick out, or the volume that you're trying to put on yourself, it's like you see it, and your first thought's always, I can't do that, or I can do that. But the thing is like, first of all, you can believe that you can or you can't, but you never know until you do. And I just think that's something very, very important for athletes to wrap their mind around, is and hopefully opening up a whole new door to making this sport so much more fun and beneficial, is that try to detach yourself away from like these immediate digital race recap, performances that are what's going to define you as an athlete. Like the great thing about this sport and endurance sports in general, what it allows to happen is like this exploration of self, not just like the physical side, but the emotional and mental side of what you believe and why and it challenges you all the time. It challenges your belief system. It challenges your motivation, your commitment. Your why changes. Like, I don't think anybody's ever had the same why for 20 years, or some people don't even have one, and that's also fine. Like, everything changes. The athletic part changes, the fitness changes, the demands change. You learn a ton. And to just solely focus on meeting a threshold, yes, can you still find out things about yourself? Like, there are people just obsessed with the pursuit to qualify for USAT Nationals, or to Boston qualify, or to do this. Like, you can find wonderful things along that pursuit. You absolutely can. But what oftentimes gets lost too is that that's your only measure of success. That's the only measure you have to basically say, I did it, or I am this, is a time threshold and not a journey and what you found out along the way. Then I think you're missing out. But when you go out on specific runs and rides and swims and you restrain yourself, oftentimes it's not a physical voice that's saying restrain, restrain, restrain. It's your mind, it's your soul, it's your belief system, it's your own version of your own reality that you've probably created since you were like 5 years old. Like, or you had a bad experience with a coach who was like, you can't do this, or you. A lot of we work with a lot of things like that have come from really bad coach experiences. A lot of them are from high school or college. They work with coaches that are just totally demeaning and you're terrible and why can't you do this and why can't you do that. And so they run, they train, they ride their bikes, everything they do in fear, because it's like they have this perception of I'm not good enough. And it was nothing they ever did. It was just the voice that they always heard, usually from some person who has who never should have been a coach in the first place. But that person's voice has now become their voice, and they've carried it on through parenting. And like that's how we are in everything in life. Like we carry these voices along that the other person, they say this thing about resentment, like you were basically, it's like wanting another person to die and drinking like your own poison. Like that's the same thing with these negative self-talk and restraining yourself and not believing in yourself. Is that however the whatever way it was that you picked that reality up, or you pick that version of yourself up, or that's how you decided to see yourself, like that person is likely they don't even think about you. Like that coach that you had back in high school or college or whatever, that relationship you were in, or that terrible triathlon coach you had, like they're not thinking about you, but you're still carrying that negative load of I can't, I can't, I can't. And if you obsess about so much of an outcome or what you can't do, then you're never going to figure out what you can, ever. And that is so, like that's such a huge part as well of like why I love blending in like consistency and blocks that overlap weeks. Is you can sneak in really, really amazing, once thought unachievable items or weeks or goals or numbers on an athlete. And when they're just worried about doing the days, like I made a comment to a few athletes the last couple of weeks, because we've been running our usual run, but just a little bit more. And I was like, hey man, or hey girl, like a great job. Like, you did awesome this last week. It was a woman specifically. I was like, dude, 30 miles last night. I was like, you dominated that on top of like a ton of hard running. And she was like, oh shit, I've never in my life done that before. I've never done that kind of volume before. But had she wrapped her brain around, or me telling her that, her first thought would have been like, I can't do them, never done before. And immediately you start to work and you start to train and you start to visualize how you're going to react in a fear-based outcome versus all I got to do is wake up today and be the best version I got. And then you do that so many days in a row, the days that you're great, the days you respect the fact that you don't feel good. And next thing you know, you end up with the sum of something incredible that you once, now you're like, well, shit, now what can I do? Everything else now seems achievable, because if you do it within a process, if you do it with it being consistent and you chip away daily, and you don't make things the weekend warrior mentality where I've got to do this and I've got to do that, and if I can't, well, I've lost all opportunity, or I can't run under 9 minute miles yet because I'm just not that person, or I caught myself doing eights and I can't do that. Well, who says you can't? Like, let's walk back through. So anybody that's listening to podcasts, like the seven of you, if you go back and you think about when you say to yourself, I can't do this, or that's way too fast, who is actually telling you that? Is it the current version of yourself? Is it your coach? Is it your spouse? Is it the person you were when you were 16? Was it the parents you had when you were growing up? Was it a coach from middle school? It's very, very likely the person telling you that you can't or to slow down isn't the person that's running. It's a memory that you've held on to in a way, in a shape that you've chosen to think about yourself, that has basically attached yourself to you like a leech. that you just, or a tick, whatever you want to say, they're both gross, and basically just get it off you and rid yourself of that, and learn to, when I say like learn to fly, I don't mean like, learn to like go out and run hard every day, but like flying is freeing. Like there are no restraints. Like you're just going with the flow. And I think that's just an incredibly important, talking about like where we were going to talk about today, which is stress. Talking about removing stress like that is that, and this does kind of go along with it, is like you can stress so much about an outcome in so many of your training sessions that it can just add so much stress that you literally walk into each session with like an amount of held tension because you have this fear that you can't perform or that you won't be able to. But like that's like a huge deep topic, I think, but like those are some of the things you need to work like the hardest on in order to ever achieve what you want to achieve, or ever to become what you should and more than likely deserve to be and think about yourself. Like those are the things you need to work on, because then training becomes this whole other thing. It doesn't become, a way to criticize yourself. It doesn't become stressful. It doesn't become, even affirmation every day. It just becomes a part of who you are that can be really, really good every day, as long as you have that mindset and perspective about it.
Mhm. What about somebody like me? And I know there's a lot of people out there like me that are kind of the other way, that think that we can do things we can't.
That's not true.
But
You don't think that, you don't, I don't believe that to be true
I don't know.
about you. I just believe, and well, let me delicately phrase this.
All right.
Um, I think we all have these thoughts, these hopes, these dreams, these confidence feelings that we can do and we are capable of these specific things, whether it be athletically or professionally or whatever. That we really believe we can do that. And let's be honest, all of us have an ego. So your ego is definitely a part of it. Your ego, like that's, we all have one. If you say you don't have one, then that's your ego telling you don't. So just, we all have one. Is the more specific part of that is, yes, I can, but I'm never going to know, because more than likely I don't ever see myself putting the time and the amount of work into it that is going to be necessary for me to really truly see if I really can. But it's definitely more fun to think through that, oh, I can totally do that. If I really wanted to, I just don't. Or you can legit say, could I? Probably, or maybe, but do I want to sacrifice these other parts of my life to, like, because you would, if you want to achieve so many things in life, you like, there is no such thing as balance. Like you've got to, some things are at the head of the train, some things are at the back. Like there's no such thing as like, we're all, it's all the same. But you're like, I really don't want to give those things up. So it's not so much about what you're willing to do. A lot of it's about what you're willing to sacrifice. And I think that's what your issue would be in terms of following up and matching that belief, is with, you have to match belief with action.
Did you say I was cocky or lazy? I can't figure that out.
I said your ego is proactively, lazy yet confident. We've all
Yeah,
got one. I mean, it's like
I know. I'm
and I
kidding.
think that's part of it. It's like, but it's
I don't.
also I think it's also like that carrot that we always kind of keep out there. I think everyone thinks, oh, I could totally do this. I could totally do that. Well, I could. We all have this, like when you leave a bad experience at a retail place, or a, like I could, that's just a doctor. What does he know? Like I could totally do this. Like this guy knows nothing. Or I could run this business for this guy, and they'd be 10 times better. Like we all have those thoughts and feelings. And when it comes to like athletics, we definitely, I think we definitely all have. Well, no, that's not true. We definitely don't all have that. I think I think if we would listen to those things so hard enough, we could probably figure out an actual actionable process or pursuit that actually made sense. Like if I say to myself, I could definitely qualify for Kona. What are you really saying? Because if you're not going to put the time and the work in, because there's going to be a lot of time and a lot of work in, If you're not willing to put those things, then why even say it? So what are you really trying to say? Are you really trying to say, because a lot of athletes, I think what they're truly saying is, you know what? I probably have that athletic side in me, but what I don't have is, because it has to be both. You can't just be an athlete. Everybody likes to put just a great athlete, just a great athlete, just a great athlete. Well, you know what? I know a lot of great athletes that have achieved very little because they show no restraint, they show no commitment, and they're so wishy-washy that all they're ever going to do is be okay at like 48 different things because they can't stay focused long enough to actually do. And that's totally fine, but it's not just about being athletic, so I really don't like when I see people, oh well, they're just a different athlete. Like, they're probably a different athlete because they also have different priorities. They probably also might have different time management skills. They also might have priorities in their life about what comes first or what comes last, or how much they're willing to dedicate to the sport. It's not just about being athletic to qualify or do this or do that. Does it play a part? Sure, but it's not like that undertone of, oh well, they're just an athlete, they can just do it. Well, a lot of you gotta work hard. You gotta work really, really hard. And so I think a good exercise for most people is like, okay, well, what are you really saying when you say something like, when you think something like that? Is it jealousy? Is it something that you really thought you were going to do? Or is it, more than likely it's like your inner child from back when you were 8 being like, see, you can do these things. But the reality is like, do you really want to do them? And most of the time the answer is no, because if you really, really, truly wanted to do it, then you would do it. You would totally do it. If it's just a fleeting thought, those are super easy to get attached to because they're just what they are. They're fleeting thoughts. They mean nothing. But it's the things that mean something to you that you will just find a way, whether you think you can or you're not. So that's why I think triathlon endurance sports are so great, is that you can attach yourself to a journey and a process and figure these things out versus an outcome. But it's always about what you're willing to put in. And that's what
Hmm.
you get out. It's always what you're willing to put in.
Yeah, it is. It's a great equalizer of a sport, really.
It 100% is.
I've just I know deep down that, like, in my case, sometimes it's like the fear of not actually doing it if I put it all into it, and that's something too, you know. It's like it's sort of the old the other thing I deal with a lot too is like, I'm gonna write a book someday, and I'm not like a lot of people do that. Like, oh, I got a book, I'm working on a book, but everybody's afraid to do it because the reality could be like a massive blow to the ego, you know?
That's right.
Because I mean, that's the thing, man. It's like I think so many
You
of us do that. I
refresh
think
and you're like, 2 purchases
it's a
today in the last
natural
month.
defense mechanism. Yep. It's like, oh, I'm gonna write a book, and that alone kind of keeps you going. You know, it's like a thing. You know, it's like one day I'm gonna buy a house on the, whatever, my dream home or whatever. It's like but you don't do anything to actually do it, and that's a
You've got to have a plan. It's like, when I've even joked about this before, I think on a previous podcast, was like, most people's best day of training, the happiest they're ever going to be, is when they sign up for their Ironman and they post their registration link on Facebook.
yeah, for sure,
The
man.
world is my oyster, baby. I'm just sitting in my sweatpants. I just spent $800 on a race, and look at me. I am gonna be an Ironman. And then after that, life gets real, and you're like, freaking now I got to figure out how to train. Now I got to buy this. Now I got to be consistent. Now I got to stay healthy. It's so much more stressful, but it's always gonna be. You're so right. Like, I used to 100% live my life that way before I got sober. It was because I grew up with like or what I felt was a tremendous amount of expectation. And I also grew up feeling with a tremendous amount of depression and I'm not good enough for anything. Like, I remember feeling that, like, from as young as being in third grade. You're just not good enough. Like, you're not good enough. So partner that with growing up with a family, and where we lived was like a tremendous amount of pressure to perform and become something incredible. Like, by the time you're like, you go to college and you become a valedictorian, and you have the white picket fence and, like, the house, and the kids, and like that's how you live your life, and you go to church and all these things. It's like, but every corner you turn, you're a failure. So for me, growing up, and especially like leading into when I was drinking a lot before I got sober, it was either let me do this, Like what it's like the toughest choice to make. Do I see if I can actually become this great thing? Or is it actually easier to affirm my self-doubt? And for most people choose, in my opinion, in my experience, many people choose to affirm their self-doubt. They would much rather affirm their conscience that says you can't or you never will be or you're not good enough. They're like because because the unfortunate part of this and the unfortunate of this, the unfortunate part of that mindset of I can't, I never will be is that that becomes where you're comfortable. You become comfortable in that self-loathing, self-deprecating, like just negative self-talk of I can't, I never will, I'm never going to be good enough. So why the hell try? Because you balance that out with I'm comfortable with that. That's how I feel basically every day of my life. You take that fear and that thought and you put it up against, in a battle royale against, but what if I do go out? And what if I do see what I can accomplish? What if I fall short? Then who and what am I affirming? Because that right there, that scares people to death. Because they're like, well, what if I come up short? Like, well, what if I am not those things? And so I think I do, and this is like a topic for a whole different podcast. But it's like I think that is like a very, very hard decision for people to wrap their brain around, or just simply understanding that that's the actual decision that they make on a day-to-day basis is to affirm that negativity than to push the boundaries of what they're actually capable of because they're too afraid that they might fall short, when the reality is you're not going to fall short. You're going to pass that threshold in like the first week, and then blow past it, becoming something you just like never ever dreamed of, with your hands up in the air, flipping a bird behind you to like, peace out, see ya, I'm not living there anymore, see you later, buddy, and you're
Yeah.
on your way out.
Yeah. It's like you got to flip the week, right? If those types of experiences happen and reinforce that belief system that you know that you want to get better, but you also have that reaffirming side of you that says, well, I knew I couldn't do it.
Hmm.
But as soon as you have 4 days out of 7 where you're doing better than the other, I think that just takes time. And I think when I think about time like this, I mean, the reality is if quote unquote, I think I am a Kona type guy, I should be working on next year right now. I mean, that's the
Hmm.
reality of it. Um, and especially since everything's up in the air, not that I was thinking about qualifying this year, but I'm just saying that's the process usually. It's like, do I have, sure, I can do it. I mean, most people can probably if they just, but the disproportion of work that everyone has to do is different.
Hmm.
And are you willing to do what it takes for you to get what you want? And most times, unfortunately, that answer is no in
Yep,
everything.
it's so much more fun though to think about than it
I know.
is
Well,
to
it's
actually
safer.
put in. Like it is safer, but it's also easier. Like
Yeah,
easier and
it's
safer, the
easier
same
and safer.
thing in a lot of ways. It's like it's just like, oh, it's more fun to talk about it, but it's like you walk into Starbucks and you see like 19 soon to be gigantic ultimate business opportunities that everyone's talking about, and then it's like, oh well, this coffee chat was super fun. Well, wait a minute. What means actionable steps? Like now we gotta like do something. Nah, it's more fun to talk about. I got this thing that's gonna blow up, man. You be part of it. Oh, now I gotta
Did
do a
that ever happen
road.
when you were at the bars?
No, dude, all the time.
That's the kingpin of those ideas. Oh
All the
my
time.
God.
What do you mean,
Did
dude?
I?
Yeah, but you can't use, from, a guy who's in recovery. Like you can't use like meeting at a bar as like my common denominator, because I met you at a bar, or
I know.
basically hung out. I met my wife at a bar. Like I did a lot of awesome things at bars, but a lot of terrible things too.
Hmm.
Um, but
Hey, I got
yeah,
a quick story to
let
end
me,
with.
yeah,
Quick one.
let's cap it off.
It's a good one, I think.
Okay, well, let me hear it then.
My buddy, when he lived here, he moved 7 years ago. He moved here from here to the Keys. He wanted to be a musician full time, and his music really lends itself to sort of that beach vibe, that Jimmy
Hmm.
Buffett-y kind of thing. He went to the Keys on a whim, and now he's kind of one of the more popular musicians around the Keys he played. Well, when they're open, of course they're not right now. They're not letting anybody in. But like on a normal week, he might have 7 or 8, 9 gigs a week, and he's a pretty popular guy down there. But he's he's one of those talker guys that talks to the crowd a lot and stuff like that. He
Sure.
told me last night. He said whenever he sees somebody, because of the tourism thing, and whenever he sees somebody walking with like an M dot tattoo, Iron Man tattoo, he always like engages them in conversation. And he says, "Hey, my buddy is part of the Crushing Iron podcast. You ever heard of that?" And he said nobody has said no.
I don't believe
doing
that.
That's what he told me. He was a little drink. He had a few beers.
Thank you. Let's be honest.
But he said it's always a great point of conversation. I thought that was kind of cool.
They're like, yeah, I was one of the 1 stars. We're like, great, good talks.
Like Dogcast, those guys. Yeah,
those guys suck. That's cool. Good story, man. Way to cap it off on a high note. Yeah. He's always big in the Keys. But hey, we were late. We're still on time. We come to you twice a week. We will again this week, more than likely on Thursday, regular scheduled programming. Appreciate your patience as always, and your flexibility, Mike, and your great stories. We will cap it off. We appreciate you tuning in. If you haven't and want to check it out, you can hop over to our website, C26Triathlon.com. It's all things camps, community, and coaching. If you have any comments about really anything, you can always email Mike at crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have anything for me, you can always reach out to me directly, C26coach@gmail.com.
All right, yeah. Check it out. Check out the online hub right now. There. Check it out.
Do it.
All
right, man.
Insider stuff.
We're
really good at sales, man.
Stories in there about this dude in the Keys. Yeah, sister.
I'm gonna write that. I'm gonna blog that one. It'll be in there. $9 to get you that story through September. You can read it as much as you want.
More stories like that in December.
All right. Well, I guess that'll wrap it up.
That'll wrap it up. That was a good one. I enjoyed that. That's right. All right, man. We'll see you Thursday.
Thursday it is. Thanks, buddy.